Now I would like to move forward with the panel discussion. We have the topic is India and Japan, an unbreakable bond. Our panelists are Dr. Satoru Nagao, Major General Dr. D Bakshi, Professor Rajib Shaw, Mr. Tomio Isogai, and our moderator is Ms. Nupur Tewari. Nupur Tewari is a motivational speaker, transformation and mindfulness coach. I would like to request Nupur Tewari to handle this session. Over to you, Ms. Nupur Tewari.
Okay, Dhanusri, thank you so much.
Thank
You
you
so much, Dhanusri. Major General Bakshi will be here soon, within a minute, and I'd like to congratulate the organizer of Konnichiwa Pune that organizing such a wonderful program, especially, this pandemic. We need a lot of motivation. We need a lot of, more enthusiastic staff than before, because things are not normal anywhere in the world. And we have to be with each other. We have to motivate each other. We have to pull each other up, and this we have to just face this situation everywhere in the world. And again, the as we all know that after the storm, the next day, even in the next day, the sun rises with the brightest form. So it is going to be, I think 2020, it's going to be really great for all over the world, the economy and every way. I think it is going to be great. And yeah, we are waiting for the great 2020. And during this pandemic, last year, I think Konnichiwa Pune did not happen because of the pandemic. And this year, so much courage you just accumulated to have it online. This is wonderful thing you are doing, and just making the bridge between two countries. So I'm going to start with my panelist. I would say my panelist, our panelist, and distinguished guest, definitely. So I'm going to start with Major General D Bakshi. He's SM VSM. He's from 6 Jammu and Kashmir Rifles, commissioned in the Indian Army from IMA Dehradun in November 1971. He was awarded the Visist Seva Medal for commanding a battalion in the Kargil War. And not only that, I think you all know that he has written many books. So there are his books you will find on Amazon, on everywhere. He has definitely authored many books.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah. We can hear you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so everyone.
Hi, Satoru.
Yeah, welcome to Konnichiwa Pune, Major General D Bakshi, and I have introduced you already, but now since you joined, so I'm going to do it again. So Major General D Bakshi, SM VSM. He is from 6 Jammu and Kashmir Rifles, commissioned in the Indian Army from IMA Dehradun in November 1971. He was awarded the Visist Seva Medal for commanding a battalion in the Kargil War. So welcome to Konnichiwa Pune, Major General D Bakshi.
Thank you so much for having me in this very prestigious conference with my very dear Japanese friend, especially Dr. Satoru Nagao. Belated happy birthday.
Wonderful. And the next guest, Dr. Satoru Nagao, a defense expert and fellow non-resident at Hudson Institute. And our third panelist, Professor Rajib Shaw, Keio University. He is the professor of Keio University, and he was awarded with Pravasi Bharatiya Award. And he believes that work is worship. And definitely, as I said before, I don't have to introduce Tomio Isogai-san. Mr. Tomio Isogai-san is ex-MD of SARP, and he's just making bridge between India and Japan. So thank you so much, 4 of you, for joining Konnichiwa Pune. Thank you. So now I'd like to start with Major General G.D. Bakshi. Uh, Sir, what do you think the defense wise, how India and Japan can be more close?
Thank you for initiating discussion on a very, very vital topic. If there are two countries in Asia and the world which can really counterbalance the growing power of a rising and aggressive China, it is India and it is Japan. These are the only two countries which have the military economic capacity to take on, contain, and counterbalance China. And I'm saying we are already part of the Quad arrangement, the quadrilateral of democracy. But even more than that, I think India and Japan should now head for a bilateral relationship which elevates from the strategic partnership level to the level next, because it is essential in the interests of our own two countries. We have seen how the United States has formed the AUKUS in addition to the Quad. In addition to the Quad, we have the AUKUS. You know, Australia, UK, and the United States have formed a grouping of countries with a very strong military component in which they are going to share nuclear submarine technology with Australia and help Australia build 8 nuclear submarines, which will, of course, in a very major way, add to the deterrence against China. So, in addition to the Quad grouping of which we are already members, and as part of which we have our annual Malabar naval exercises and a lot of other cooperation, military to military cooperation ongoing. We now need to go to level next, which was the original vision of the Japanese Prime Minister and also the Indian Prime Minister. So, as I was trying to say, when we talk of military to military cooperation, we do. So I would suggest in very practical point form terms without beating around the bush that India and Japan firstly need to cooperate in space technology. India here has advantage of having started, I think, earlier. And to that extent, we can launch many more Japanese military satellites, reconnaissance satellites, communication satellites, and we can share rocket technology with them, and we can do joint space launches. Certainly, we could even think to the level of going up and setting up a space station at a point in time, because space is the next high ground. Space is,
Wonderful.
if
Since
you
you are talking
control,
about
just like they used
space,
to say earlier, that, if you control anybody who has air superiority will win the war. In the Second World War, Japan had, because of its excellent naval aviation, had gained total air superiority by attacking the Pearl Harbor, destroying Pearl Harbor, and therefore their operations in Malaysia, Singapore, Burma were highly facilitated by air power. Space is the next high ground, and India and
okay.
Japan must cooperate very closely in space.
Okay. So
Next,
since you talked about space, Major
just,
General G. Okay.
no,
Okay.
no, there are a few more points, please. I'll
Mhm.
just finish. The other is cyber security. There, Japan has a great advantage, and Japan and India must cooperate in cyber security. Japan is building a fifth generation stealth fighter aircraft. So is India. This is another region where we could jointly produce a fighter. And that fighter would get us economies of scale, because many more would be required by the air forces of India and the air forces of Japan. So we could, work jointly to develop an Indo-Japanese fifth generation stealth fighter aircraft, right? Next would be, I think, one of the most experienced countries in submarine warfare is Japan, courtesy their experience in the Second World War. Even in submarine building, India and Japan could cooperate, could share technologies, could help one another. Next is we have developed a very good artillery 155 millimeter gun in our private sector. This is called the ATAG. The Kalyani Forge and the others have done that. The American 155 millimeter gun has a range of 45. Our gun has a range of 48 kilometers. The American gun has a 3 round per minute fire capabilities. Ours has 5 rounds. American gun has a noisy auxiliary propulsion unit. We have an electrical auxiliary propulsion unit. I'm sure India and Japan could cooperate in this and once again aim at economies of scale. BrahMos cruise missile. Vietnam is asking for it. A number of other countries are asking for it. And this will greatly, this is a supersonic cruise missile. We already have it and we are working on the hypersonic. So this is another area of major significant cooperation. And my personal suggestion is India as a nuclear power should give a guarantee to Japan and Vietnam that if any country threatens Japan with nuclear weapons, whether it is China, whether it is North Korea, any country, threatens Japan or Vietnam with, these are both Buddhist countries. So we have a very special relationship with them. And we would not appreciate any country threatening Japan with nuclear weapons. We could at that stage have a kind of a treaty like we had an agreement with the Russians that both countries in such threat or actual use would urgently hold joint consultation and take measures to thwart that threat to Japan, to Vietnam. Two Buddhist countries, two very brave countries which are threatened. India, since India is a nuclear power, I think it would be very, very much in the fitness of things if we extend our nuclear umbrella to Japan and to Vietnam. Till such time, Japan, they have their own debate, and if they want to, make their own nuclear weapons, because the threat to Japan is increasing exponentially, not only from China, also from a very, very unstable North Korea. So it is for Japan to decide whether they want to go nuclear at any stage. But as an interim solution, this is a personal suggestion, that I think India should offer Japan and Vietnam a nuclear kind of consultation and insurance agreement that should somebody threaten to use nuclear weapons or do actual use of nuclear weapons against Japan and Vietnam, India will urgently consult with them to take measures to defuse that threat. So these are some of the suggestions that I have. As we go on, we can have more. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely your strength, reaching to Japan, and I'm sure that the both government will listen to you, and definitely, both government will take steps towards the whatever your personal and the those suggestions you have given today. So definitely we can feel that strength, we can feel that Indian Army strength. I can feel that so many thousand miles away. So since you talked about the space, so I'm going to the education sector. So education sector from Dr. Rajib Shah, Professor Rajib Shah is with us. So Professor Rajib Shah, what do you think, how Japan can attract more Indian students?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nupur. Let us see that why people go to America. They go there to pursue American dream, right? I think
Yes.
We have not been able to show the Japanese dream to the youth of India. And to me, Japanese dream does not necessarily mean, or it is not exactly the American dream. If American dreams talks about technology and finance, I think the Japanese dream is more on innovation, more on omotenashi, which is the service-oriented mindset, healthcare, tourism, social innovation, and there are lots of other different sectors actually. And we often, our Indian students actually don't know all these aspects where there are lots of strength in Japan. 2 years back in Keio University, we established what we call the India-Japan Laboratory with the objective to undertake some of the cutting edge bilateral, multilateral research on different topics, and also to enhance this higher education and the partnership, also facilitate this intellectual capital actually. We did some work. We have actually an Indian study course where we invite all different experts from different disciplines. We also do different types of idea incubation for the students, internship programs in Japanese companies, as well as undertake specific research in project. What we try to do actually, it's a balanced mix, I said, between Indian talents and the Japanese talents. And you know, in India, this word called jugaad is quite common. And jugaad for our Japanese colleagues, jugaad is an Hindi word for innovation mixed, or what we call the improvised solution. And the whole India's ecosystem of startup, the startup ecosystem is actually built on this jugaad innovation. There has been actually a very good book on jugaad innovation. If you just Google it, you will be able to see that. So this is, we have that mindset actually in India. And what Japan has, Japan, I often use these two words. One is omotenashi, as I mentioned, that is the quality of services. And that possibly makes Japan what Japan is. And another particular term in Japanese we call kaizen, which is the perfection. So this is a very traditional PDCA cycle, like whatever you make in Japan, plan, do, check, action, you see it, you see what are the faults there, and then make it better in your next model. And that is like the whole Japanese, like made in, whether it is car, whether it is like different electronics, whether it is the cameras, that Kaizen concept has actually made the quality of Japan. So this, I say that jugaad and omotenashi and Kaizen, that particular mixing can really make India and Japan the champion in the world. Major General Bakshi has given one example of why India and Japan should be the defense partner. And my argument would be why India and Japan should be more business than innovation partner is because we have that particular elements in both the Indian youth as well as in the Japanese youth. And I'm sure that now many universities in Japan are interested in Indian studies and they are accepting. I just gave one example from my university, but there are many of them. Similarly, many of the universities in India, there are Japanese study centers which are established. But the issue is that many of the young people, they don't know this one, especially in India. And in that way, the platform like Konnichiwa Pune is extremely, extremely important to spread the message that yes, we have lots of potential in this particular bilateral relationship. We have strategic partnership established, and there are immense scope that Indian students come to Japan and does all the different types of studies, all the different elements which was Major General Bakshi pointed out. And many of the Japanese universities have that type of strategic studies programs. So why Indian students does not come to Japan is, I think it's failure from our side. The people who are in the universities in Japan, possibly, we have not been able to show that Japanese dream to the Indian students. I will stop here for the time.
So Dr. Rajib said from our side, so you are from both sides. So from Indian side and from Japanese side. So it's like our sides. Yeah.
Both
So it's so now I'm going to Dr. Satoru Nagao. So Dr. Nagao, you heard both the panelists that the defense partnership and innovation partnership. So now I would like to know that what do you think? You are definitely a defense expert. So how Japan and India, you heard Major General D Bakshi. What is your opinion? How we can be more close when it comes to defense and how we can protect each other?
Thank you very much for asking. Yes, of course, respectable Major General Bakshi explained most of it. So because I'm Japanese, I try to explain why Japan focusing on India, the view from Japan side. Indeed, Japan insists two ideas. One is Indo-Pacific, and the second one is Quad. Why Japan says so? Indeed, this idea is originally came from the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's address in the Indian Parliament in 2007. Why he pointed out this idea? Why he want to introduce? Because there are three reasons, I think. First one is this region is rising. In the Pacific side and Indian Ocean side, both regions are rising, and this region will be the center of the world politics. What is the center of the world politics? Center of the world politics. Originally, we use this word to explain how influential Europe is. For example, if the big war has happened in Europe, influence will spread to the world, and the people call this is world war. So World War I, World War II, every time Europe is center of the world politics. But now, the both Pacific side and Indian Ocean side, both regions are rising economically, but because of this region, country in this region are rising economically, they can buy weapons and they raise their defense budget. So militarily, this region is also influential. Now something happen in this region, the influence will spread to the world. So like Europe, now Indo-Pacific is rising region and center of the world politics. So that is the reason that he want to introduce. But this region is under the threat, because if China dominated this region, it is not a good situation for both India and Japan. That is the reason Shinzo Abe introduced not only the Indo-Pacific, but also the Quad at the same time. And in 2012, he published one article, Asia's Democratic Security Diamond. Why he published this? Because he need to explain how to deal with rising China or assertive China or China's aggressiveness. So Quad is the key. Quad is the key for the Indo-Pacific, for the secure of the Indo-Pacific. If India and Japan cooperate each other, we can divide China's defense budget two sides. That is very important because when we check China's activity in the South China Sea, when France withdrew from Vietnam, that timing China occupied half of the Paracel Island. And when US withdrew from the Vietnam, another half of the Paracel Island occupied by China. And when Soviet Union reduced their troops in Vietnam, they expand their influence to the Spratly Island and occupy the sixth feature of the Spratly Island. And when US troops withdraw from Philippines, China occupied the Mischief Reef. So when they find a power vacuum, when the power vacuum created by the changing military balance, they occupied it. So how to maintain military balance with China is the key to deter China's aggressiveness. If India and Japan cooperate each other, China need to divide their defense budget two sides. So now is the time for Quad. If Quad country cooperate each other, China need to divide their defense budget multi-direction. That is the reason how to maintain military balance is the key, and the Quad is the key in the Indo-Pacific. But in this case, why Prime Minister Shinzo Abe want to introduce this? Because India is the most important in the concept. Why he introduced this idea in Indian parliament? Because India is the most important. Why? Because for US, Japan, US, Australia, this is alliance, formal alliance. There are plenty of chances to cooperate. But India is a newcomer. When we need to deal with China, we need to include India. That is the purpose to introduce Indo-Pacific and the Quad. So this is a concept to cooperate with India. So view from such a situation, view from such kind of situation, if the people understand this, we can motivate, we can persuade the people how important India-Japan relation is. So this is a very important motivation that we need to explain again and again, and the people should understand. So view from this idea, this is my idea. Advertise this idea again and again. It's very important. Well, that's the answer of your question. Thank you.
Until unless people, they put it in their brain. So we have to just keep repeating this idea.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to our fourth panelist, Mr. Isogai. So you heard, Mr. Isogai, that our three panelists from the education sector, from defense sector, what actually defense is very important for both countries. Without our security, the economy cannot grow. Definitely. And here we are getting closer day by day, India and Japan, not only defense, but every way. So now I'm coming to the work culture. The India and Japan, since still we have very different work culture. As Professor Shaw said, that Jugaad and here Kaizen, it's like a totally opposite kind of thing, the totally opposite. So how do you think we can just bring peace there and we can collaborate? We can teach the Japanese working style to Indian and Indian working style to Japanese.
Well, okay, thank you for your question. I do believe from my heart that India and Japan can become the only strongest partners in the whole world from many reasons. From many historical backgrounds, some of the spirituality that we share each other. And even though we look different, we are seemingly different looking in terms of the work culture, as you said, and in terms of all the societal, value systems. Those are very different. So we look different, we physically look different as well. We mentally may be thinking differently, but spiritually in the mind and the hearts, we have something in common. I think which is very strong bonding between the two. And I believe there is no other country that can be shared equally. Only India and Japan. This is what I feel my heart. My heart means my blood and my skin, my five senses can detect that. Otherwise, I'm not here. I'm here in Pune, India. It's been 10 years now, right? Why I keep living here and working for Indo-Japan relationship in many aspects. Security, as Major General told, and Nagano-san also agreed about the security issues. Without a doubt, no questions. India is a focal point in this Indo-Pacific region. No question about it. India has been a bit more independent, and India has been very much, diplomatically collaborating with many parts of the world. But now we should focus on how to fight against aggression by China. There's no doubt, there's no question. And we can do together a lot of work. And as Professor Shaw said, yes, Jugaad is very, very important concept. I always teach, to the students. I always tell the students, as you may know, see, Japanese teamwork spirit and accountability combined with Indian jugaad concept that can make the best manufacturing system in the world, because Japan has lost its competitiveness in the last 3 decades, big time. And China has got onto the top of the competitiveness. Why? Very simple. China has the jugaad concept. Japan does not. But India has that. So when we get together, working in, closely, the important thing is understanding each other and respecting each other, and to complement each other, to work out, to come up with as any project, either in the security, either in the defense system, either in the airspace, technologies, or in the IT or IoT, AI industry, whatever it is. I do believe the Japanese minds are very much stronger in the hardware, making the things in the hardwares, right? Of making things in a perfect quality. We are very good at it. But Indian people have the jugaad, which is the flexibility, adaptability, see, and adjustability to the environment. And this jugaad concept can bring us to the strengths that we have never had before. And that is the reason why we lost the competitiveness to China. They had that. See? So we need to come back again to work together for this concept in any fields, any aspects. That's my,
from Kaizen to Jugaad.
Yeah. Kaizen is always a part of the quality assurance, right? Okay. Perfect quality. That's been done already in the past. Japan has made this standard very, very strategically and intensively. Now India should learn that. But Japan also should learn from Indian people how to make it under the jugaad concept, to make it a competitive, a product and service in any fields. Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's my point.
Thank you. So now I'm again going back to Major General D Bakshi. So, sir, actually, now you heard from our 2 Japanese panelists that what Japan is thinking and what Japan is, the way Japan works. So now, since I know Indian Army a little bit, I have been taking a lot of interviews, all Indian armies, all officers. So I personally feel that Indian Army and Japanese working culture, very similar. The very specific, like Kaizen, like very, very similar, like excellence, totally, perfection is there. So Japanese society, the perfection is very much there, Kaizen and whatever, all these things, the way they make their product, and Indian Army, totally perfect, and they're wonderful people. So now my question to you, that how we can, Indian Army and the Japanese Army, which is actually that how excellent it was, and definitely still it is, how we can just bring them together and train each other, and we can be more excellent and lead these 2 countries, the best countries in the world. Your points, please.
The question is addressed to?
To you, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the viewpoint of our Japanese brothers. I will not call them friends, I will call them brothers, right? And our civilizational traditions go back centuries. They worship the Saraswati, they worship the Lakshmi, Indian gods in different names. Our gods are the same. We share the bonds of Buddhism, right? And then in recent history, No other country has helped India to be free. And let me state it bluntly. Had it not been for Japan, India would never have gotten its freedom in 1947 because of the great help that Japan gave to Subhash Chandra Bose and the Azad Hind Fauj, right? And everybody knows about Justice Radha Vinod, and what he did during the so-called war crime trials, etc. So
Tokyo
our
trial.
relationships are very deep. Now they are need-based relationships. We need one another. If you have to fight, contain, or deal with a very hostile China, which is getting aggressive on our borders, getting aggressive in the East China Sea, South China Sea against Taiwan, then we have a compulsion to cooperate. We have a compulsion. There is no way. I mean, as a military thinker, military strategist, there is no option. These two countries have to come together. We need to increase people to people relations. You know, I would like to inform the learned professor that a number of our corporate entities, I go give talks to corporate talks to our friends in the corporate sector in India. They are all coming to Kaizen. They have adopted Kaizen. The Indian Armed Forces studied Kaizen very closely and are trying to adopt it. We are learning from one another. That is the osmosis that must take place. We need to increase people to people cooperation. You know, there is a need in India to increase language skills of Japanese. That is how we will be able to really take advantage of the Japanese educational sector, the Japanese private sector, the business sector. Now is the time for businesses to cooperate, because we found that the bureaucracy in India is a big stumbling block. Even though the Prime Minister had expressed his this thing, they kept trying to find out about the price of the amphibious aircraft, this, that, and the other. They were frankly an obstacle. So I would say that we let the bureaucracy go. We work direct with the Japanese private sector, our private sector. We set up cooperative. We encourage Japan to shift whatever manufacturing capacity they have in China to India. Our labor is cheap, our labor is good, and we will offer, ease of doing business. Prime Minister Modi has done a lot. I know we had problems, and problems due to bureaucratic mindset, obstructionist, delay, don't take a decision, obstruct decision, delay decision. That is very extremely sad, and we get quite frustrated sometimes in our armed forces at the attitudes of the bureaucracy, because I thought the India-Japan relationship should have moved much, much faster, much deeper. There is need to go, speed up this thing and increasingly, urgently increase people-to-people contact. Satoru-san has done a great job in increasing India-China, our link with one another and our understanding of one another. I would like more Japanese friends, more Japanese brothers and sisters to come into this, increase people-to-people contact across the board, whether in business, whether in military, whether in outer space, nuclear field, whichever field Japan wants, we would like to increase contact, have more Japanese firms investing in India, big startups, creating industries, Indo-Japanese, cooperating with our firms so that we keep the bureaucracy out. And you will find things will go much, much, much faster. One idea that I have to increase people-to-people contact between Japan and India is, and we are already working on it. I have spoken to the Ministry of Culture. I am in deep contact with them. And we are saying we should promote a Buddhist pilgrimage tourism circuit in India. And we would request our Japanese friends to help, where the Lord Buddha was born, where he preached first in Sarnath, where he passed away, where he went all over. That whole circuit is being developed. We are trying to create airfields there, airports, better hotels to high-end tourists, mid-class tourists, low-end tourism, cheaper tourism, but we want it in the mass to encourage the people of the Buddhist countries to come here on a Hajj scale. You see the scale of the Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia, where the Muslims of the world come there. So why can't the Buddhists of the world come to India from South Korea, from Japan, from Taiwan, from Vietnam, the whole of Southeast Asia, Burma, Ceylon, Mongolia, you name it, all of us come there so that people to people contact will increase.
It's
That is what we are now trying to do. And we have one circuit of the Buddhist pilgrimage circuit in the north, where Lord Buddha was, where he preached, where he lived, where he passed away, he attained Mahanirvan. There is another circuit south, the Buddhist cave circuit, Ajanta, Ellora, Pittalkhora, Pitangalya, Bihar. Then even in Andhra, there are sites linked with Buddhism. So we will develop those, circuits so that people-to-people contact increases, and we learn to, have much greater contact. Before World War I, World War II, Japanese painters had come to Shanti Niketan. Artists,
yes.
they had taught our people their style, and we tried to create a fusion of the Japanese style. Rabindranath Tagore did that. Why is that not happening now? That should
Exactly.
happen. And the Ministry of Culture, the Minister of State for Culture, Madam Meenakshi Lekhi, very dynamic lady, she is now taking full steps to reach out to Japan. By the way, we are trying to build a war memorial to the INA in front of the Red Fort, a huge statue for Netaji on our Rajpath. We made this thing. So all these projects are on. And then we will invite General Fujiwara and his family. I believe he is unfortunately no longer with us. So the family, we will try and get them over. Families of those who helped the INA, Japanese, we will try and get them to India. This is the 125th anniversary year of Netaji Subhash Bose. A major year in which to increase contact, increase points of contact. We must do that. And like I said, the Indian and the Japanese military industries must cooperate in building a fifth generation fighter, building submarines, building warships, building artillery guns. Possibly, why can't we design a joint tank for amphibious operations? There's so much Japanese experience there. The Japanese have one of the world's best military cultures, the samurai culture, the knights of the Bushido. And we have recent combat experience. Last 45 years, our army has been fighting, Air Force, Navy, more or less they have been fighting non-stop. So the recent combat experience we will share with them, and the Japanese military culture of the samurai tradition is so strong. So with the two of us, we can be an unbeatable combination. And
Unbreakable
we can give
combination.
China a run for its money. Not only in Asia, in the rest of the world. We must cooperate. We have no option but to cooperate. And whatever
Yeah.
hesitancies there are, we have to overcome. There's no question. If the language is the problem, the Indian students are pretty good. They are pretty hardworking. Let them learn the Japanese language and let them learn it fast. And I'm sure vice versa. You see how well Satoru-san is communicating with us now. He comes almost every year to India. I would like more Japanese scholars to come to India. I would like more Indian scholars and retired military to reach out to the Japanese military, call them for seminars, call them for discussions, talks, and more of this. Our people should go there. Their military people, retired people should come here. Serving people are already interacting. We need to double, treble, increase this 10 times. It is not. It is not to my personally, we think the vision that uh, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had and Prime Minister Modi had has not been fully implemented.
We have to implement now,
We
from now.
have to do it. And
Yes.
these are the kind of programs that you are doing, Nupur. You have also been doing a great service to the India-Japan friendship, brotherhood, and we would like you to encourage and have many more such webinars. Webinars cost nothing. Webinars cost nothing. You don't even have to pay for tickets and hospitality. So let's start with these straight away. Have more of these,
Okay.
have one a week. This is what I would like to tell you. Different
With
scholars.
your blessing, let's start it. With your blessing.
And
आपके
there
आशीर्वाद से
was
शुरू
that
कर देते हैं.
Japanese Cultural Society, I am now forgetting the name. They are in touch with a number of our people, and they have poetry reading sessions. There are Indians writing poetry in the haiku style, you know, and trying to learn. I was just yesterday at a poetry reading session where a poet from India, Virendra Gupta, who studied the Japanese poetry, and he was composing poetry in English in the Japanese style, haiku style. You know? And so there are so many points of contact, and the time has now come that we shed all inhibition. There are naysayers on both sides. There are people who started saying when we were talking of Japanese submarine or the Japanese amphibious aircraft, oh, this is very costly, which is this. You forget the cost. We will have to now go non-commercial if we want to, go the extra mile to reach out to one another. Reach out to one another. So
Okay.
the bureaucratic mindset is the biggest thing to new ideas. They just want to go with what has been happening. We buy arms from Russia, we buy arms from France, and we will continue the buy. We'll have to break, it will have to change. And now India wants to produce its own. So we go for joint production with Japanese firms. Mitsubishi is a world-class firm. I mean, they have been producing weapons since World War II. So we now need to get together. We now need to ramp up the speed. And as Satoru very rightly pointed out, even if we don't get into kinetic operations together against China, the very fact that we are cooperating in defense means China cannot bring all its military resources to bear against India. China cannot bring all its military resources to bear against Japan or Taiwan or Vietnam, because it has to deal with India. And an India that is getting stronger by the day. And we had it out with the Chinese recently, and they are quite shaken up. We would like to do more. We would like to do more, even if we don't cooperate in kinetic operations for some reason of the bureaucracy is trying to put in force. The very fact that we are cooperating militarily, Japan is going strong militarily, India is going strong militarily, means China has to divide its attention. This central thesis of Satoru is excellent, and it must go home to the meanest intelligence.
Thank you.
We are diverting China's attention.
So let's divert China's attention. So
and China's strategy is one single direction, strategic direction. They want to focus on one. Don't let them focus on one.
Okay, let's do that. So I'm going to Professor Shaw. Professor Shaw, as you heard that Major General Bakshi, he said people-to-people contact, and he's encouraging the Indian to learn Japanese. So what do you feel as a professor, sir, that the Japanese, Indians should learn Japanese or Japanese should learn English? Like, what do you think? Which would be better?
Hindi.
Thank you.
चलो हिंदी बोलते हैं. Satoru-san, Hindi. Asta kara. Yes, Professor Shaw.
Thank you. I think we are going in the age where the language really doesn't matter. Whether you speak Hindi, whether you speak Japanese, whether you speak English, doesn't matter actually. And with all the new technologies, what Japan is proposing, I'm not sure whether our Indian colleagues or friends are aware about what called Society 5.0, which is a very technology-oriented, human-centric, futuristic society, which brings many different sectors together, whether it is health, education, tourism, agriculture, all different sectors together. And there, you really don't need the actual language. Like I was seeing some small video by Kedan Ren Japan Business Federation that you are talking in your own language. Like it was very interesting, like one Japanese, one Indian, one Spanish, and one American. They were speaking in their own language. And I think that's the world should be after maybe 5 years down the line and 10 years down the line. And all is different, like AI-based translation. So I think any person should be encouraged to have the education in their mother tongue. And why Japan is now Japan? Because Japan's higher education is in Japanese. And in India, what we do, that our higher education, we do it in English. But our higher education, a person feel more comfortable to understand the more, like we do it actually other way. We do like our elementary school, junior high school, usually in India, in maybe in your own language, but then your higher education, when you need to grasp that particular aspect or grasp the complexity of the subject, then you go to the foreign language. I personally did it. I am from West Bengal. I did all my studies up to class 12, which is the high school. I did it in Bengali. And then when I went to the university, instantly I started in English. And it was very difficult for me to understand all the difficult terms, to whether I should focus more on the language or whether I should focus more on the subject. So I think with the advancement of the technology, I think that barrier should be overcome very soon. And it really doesn't matter which language we will be talking. But I would like to also highlight one thing, like going back to this people-to-people connection. And we really hope that more Indian students come to Japan for studies, and also the other way, more Japanese students should go to India for studies. There are still very restricted number of opportunities, like the scholarship. The most famous one, the Ministry of Education scholarship, which is the MEX scholarship. Still, with that Indian population, we have only 40 or 45 MEX scholarship, which is similar as Vietnam or Indonesia. We see the population distribution is totally like unrealistic to have that limited number of scholarship. You know that in every year from India to US, the students go in the level of 100,000, around 150 to 200,000. In all the difficulties between India and China, do you know how many Indian students go to China every year? It's the level of 10 to 12,000 Indian students are going to China. And how many Indian students are coming to Japan? It was earlier around 1,200. And in recent years, it has increased to 1,400 to 1,600. So still it is 1/10. Still it is 1/10 of the students who are going to China. Why still Indian students are going to China? Because of, again, like the scholarship. In many of the Chinese universities, they are providing scholarships. In Japan also, the recent concept of the scholarships have been changing. When I came here 27 years back, it was the Ministry of Education scholarships. But I think now there are lots of private scholarships which are coming up. I talked about the India-Japan laboratory. We are actually discussing very closely with Kedan Ren, which is the Japan Business Federation, to start some new the scholarship for the Indian student, because it is for the sake of the very existence of many Japanese companies that they need high-skilled professionals from India. So the Business Federation only, and I agree with General Bakshi, that when you talk about the government to government, there are lots of bureaucracy. but that when the private sector comes, and that's why we are working more with this business federation, try to encourage them, that try to bring more Indian students to Japan, and then Japanese universities, and then ultimately try to enter into the Japanese companies. And I have seen actually in recent year, even a couple of my students, they have joined Japanese companies, but it is not only just in Japan or India. Like they are actually heading the bases in, say, for example, in Dubai, they are in Singapore. So within this India-Japan bilateral collaboration, I think with the Indian mind and the Japanese mindset, with the Indian education system and the Japanese education system, as Isogai-san mentioned, that it is totally different, but there are lots of commonalities, and the commonalities are the spirituality and that human touch. I think that can really, in the business sector also, in the innovation sector also, that can really lead the business in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor So. So now we're going to Dr. Nagao. Dr. Nagao, so you heard that people-to-people contact and the language, actually, Professor So also said. So what do you think, that language can be barrier when it comes to defense or any other sector? Language can be barrier?
Of course, language is a barrier, especially for Japanese, indeed. Japanese cannot speak English well in most cases. That is the reason when we met Americans, we cannot communicate. Of course, in front of Indian, we cannot communicate. That's the situation. That's true. Japanese can speak Japanese. That is one of the important definition why we are Japanese. But at the same time, we need to improve this situation. And why India can speak English well? Because Indians speak a lot. Japanese do not speak a lot, even if between Japanese. So we need to train. So in this case, what should we do? One of the solutions is if Indian teacher, English teacher come to Japan and teach Japanese English, that is one of the solutions. And at the same time, if India set up the good school, accept many Japanese students to learn English, that is another solution. So English is very important key. Of course, Hindi is also good, but at the same time, Hindi, if Japanese want to learn the Hindi, this is only specific for India. But if we can use English, we can communicate many other countries, including all of the Quad countries. So, from the security issue, language barriers exist, that's true. But at the same time, I need to point out one more thing. One more thing is very important. Why Japan ally with other countries? Indeed, this is not directly related with human-human connection. Human-human connection is very important. People-to-people exchange is very important. But view from the security or the tendency of the Japan's alliance, and this is not the most important factor. Because when Japan ally with the British, most important reason is deteriorating relation with Russia. When Japan ally with the Germany, most important reason is deteriorating relation with the United States. When Japan allies with the United States, most important reason is expanding communism in the China and Vietnam in the continent. So, view from this, the rising China is good coordinator for India and Japan to strengthen relations. So now is the time to ally, and now the time to cooperate. After that, we should deepen the people-people relation. So we can do it, I think, because thanks to China. Thank you very much.
That's a very cute way you said, thanks to China. Chinese are feeling proud. So definitely now I'm going back to Tomio-san, to Isogai-san. Isogai-san, this is actually your subject also, people-to-people contact, and how we can stop the made in China and we can have more made in Japan and made in India. So your view, please.
Yeah. I've been doing this activities for long. You know, the people-to-people connect, and especially my focus is on the younger generation. younger generation does not mean the undergraduates or postgraduates. I'm now focusing on to the even lower, I mean, the younger, sector, like junior high school and high schools. So from 9th to 12th standard. I started just to collaborate with some, institutions here in India and Japan to make some, exchange programs so that they get to know each other. Obviously, they have to speak in English, but certain schools are okay to do that. So my point is, because of this, making friendship in between the two countries by the younger generations, then it will reflect a stronger bonding in the future. In the business circles, the competition is very tough. In the business circles, Japanese, business people, they don't like to discuss with Indian people, in general, because Indian people are very strong negotiators, right? So in the business field, the dialogue between India and Japan is very tough, sometimes not successful, sometimes very painful. But in between the youngsters, the children, they don't have such conflict in interest, right? So they can be easily coming up with a strong friendship. That friendship can lead to the confidence and trust each other, respect each other. And when they grow up, when they go out in the society, a part of the members of the society, they can be, acting as ambassadors to each other. So this bring out a strong bonding for the two nations. I'm talking about 2050, not 2030, not even 2030. I'm looking at 2050 to be the time when we see India and Japan, the strongest allies, and in the very important, economic power in the world. I believe this will happen. Thank you.
Wonderful. So today's discussion, I think we have learned a lot of things from different perspective, and from, our panelists are from different background and defense background, corporate background, education background, and they all are the best at their own field. And that is the beauty today. So actually the people-to-people contact, and definitely having the securing India and Japan's border, and definitely, those things, how we can have without even language barrier, how we can communicate more. So these points, I think we have learned from our 4 distinguished panelists and guests. And I think this is already the time. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, Major General D Bakshi. Thank you, Professor Rajib Saw. Thank you, Dr. Satoru Nagao, and thank you, Isogai-san. Thank you so much for joining. And this is just the beginning, as you suggested, Major General D Bakshi, that we should do a lot of stuff. I have been doing, and definitely I should do more. And definitely let's do it. Let's make bigger and broader bridge between India and Japan. And one more thing for the viewers, I would like to say that the Indian Army is very, since I have been taking many interviews of very many Indian Army's officers, so I can say from my personal experience that the moral values are very high. As you can see, as you heard, that Major General Bakshi said, not my friends, but my brothers. I think you have already noted that, and they are just wonderful people, the people from Indian Army. And definitely, my personally, I have been experiencing it. And all 4 of our distinguished guests, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your time and so much knowledge you did spread. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namaste, arigatou gozaimashita.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Nupur-san. Thank you very much to all the panelists.